Savannah Guthrie has just announced a $1 million reward in the search for her missing 84-year-old mother. And what her family revealed may completely change how you see this story. For 24 days, Nancy Guthrie has been gone. No confirmed sightings, no clear answers, just questions, and a family holding on to hope while preparing for every possible outcome. But here's what makes this moment different: the scale of the response, the message Savannah delivered, and the unexpected decision that reaches far beyond her own family. So what happened? And why is this case drawing national attention? Let's break it down carefully. The most powerful moment didn't come from a press conference. It came from a video. In a message shared publicly on February 24th, Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of Today, spoke directly to the public about her mother, Nancy. She described the past 24 days as agony, not speculation, not anger, just grief and determination. According to publicly available information, Nancy Guthrie was last seen on January 31st after having dinner with family. The next day, when she didn't attend a virtual church service, she was reported missing. And then came the detail that shifted the investigation. Authorities have stated that surveillance footage shows a masked individual outside Nancy's home. Based on that evidence, investigators believe this was not a random incident, but a targeted abduction. That's a strong word, and law enforcement has used it carefully. So what do we actually know? The investigation is being led by the Pima County Sheriff's Office, along with the FBI. Sheriff Chris Nanos has publicly stated that this appears to be a kidnapping rather than a burglary gone wrong, though the motive remains unclear. Is it financial? Is it personal? Or is there another explanation investigators haven't revealed? That uncertainty is what makes this case so unsettling. And then Savannah said something that stopped many people in their tracks. She acknowledged that her mother may not be alive, but in the same breath, she said her family still believes in a miracle. That emotional balance, hope, and realism is what has resonated across the country. But the biggest development? The reward. Originally set at $100,000, the Guthrie family has now increased it to $1 million for information leading to Nancy's recovery or an arrest in the case. Why make that jump? Because sometimes attention changes outcomes. And Savannah made it clear. They don't just want hope, they want answers. But that wasn't the only announcement. In addition to the reward, the family pledged $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Think about that for a second. In the middle of their own crisis, they chose to extend support to other families living in uncertainty. That shift, from personal tragedy to collective awareness, adds another layer to this story. It raises a bigger question. How many families are experiencing similar uncertainty without the national spotlight? According to officials, tens of thousands of tips have already been submitted in this case. Law enforcement has emphasized that investigations like this can take time. Sometimes months, sometimes years. But they've also made one thing clear. They are not stopping, and there's another development that investigators confirmed. An FBI spokesperson stated that a recovered glove appears to match the gloves worn by the individual seen in surveillance footage. Authorities noted that DNA recovered from the glove is consistent with the subject in the video. That detail suggests progress, but not closure. And that's the tension in this story. There are leads, there is evidence, but there are still no definitive answers. Savannah's public message didn't accuse. It didn't threaten. It didn't speculate beyond what authorities have said. Instead, she spoke directly to whoever has her or knows where she is, saying it is never too late to do the right thing. That line stands out because it reframes the narrative, not as a battle, not as outrage, but as an appeal to conscience. And that tone may be part of why this case continues to draw attention. So where does the investigation stand now? Officials have stated that timelines are unpredictable. It could be resolved soon. It could take far longer. What they've promised publicly is persistence, and Savannah's family has made their position equally clear. They need to know where Nancy is, whether that means celebrating a miraculous return or honoring a life well lived. That uncertainty, the not knowing, is what families in these situations often describe as the hardest part. But here's the bigger question. Why has this story struck such a chord nationally? Is it because Savannah is a familiar face from morning television? Is it because of the reward? Or is it because it highlights something many people quietly fear? How quickly normal life can shift. That's where the story moves beyond headlines. Because this isn't just about one family. It's about how communities respond when someone disappears. And that response is still unfolding. What's happening now is something investigators see often, but the public rarely understands. When a case receives massive attention, tips increase fast. But volume doesn't always mean clarity. According to law enforcement statements, up to 50,000 tips have already been submitted. That number sounds encouraging, until you realize how complex it makes the process. Every tip has to be logged, evaluated, cross-checked. Most will lead nowhere. A few might matter. And sometimes the smallest detail might salvage something that felt insignificant at the time becomes the key. That's why authorities keep repeating one message: even delayed information can still be useful. And that explains Savannah's tone. She didn't demand answers. She didn't express anger publicly. She asked people to come forward, even if they were unsure. That approach matters, because in cases like this, hesitation is common. People doubt their memory. They question whether what they saw is relevant. And sometimes they stay silent for too long. Savannah's message was designed to break that silence. And it worked. Public reaction to her video was immediate. Thousands of comments poured in. Not speculation, but support. People shared prayers, encouragement, and messages of hope. Others shared stories of loved ones who were missing, reminding everyone that this kind of uncertainty is far more common than it appears. That's where the story quietly shifts. This stops being just a missing person case and becomes a reflection of something broader. According to experts, families of missing adults often face a unique challenge. Unlike many crimes, there is no clear timeline, no defined process for closure, just waiting, and waiting can be exhausting. Savannah described it simply: fear, aching, and missing her mother. No dramatization, no exaggeration, just the emotional reality of not knowing. But here's an important detail that often gets overlooked. Despite acknowledging that the worst outcome is possible, Savannah said her family is still blowing on the embers of hope. That phrase matters, because hope, in these situations, isn't denial. It's endurance. And investigators understand that balance too. Sheriff Chris Nanos has stated publicly that cases like this can take years or be resolved suddenly. Sometimes evidence connects quickly. Sometimes it sits quietly until the right moment. That uncertainty is frustrating for everyone involved, but law enforcement has emphasized one thing consistently. They are not treating this as a cold case. Resources remain active. The FBI remains involved. Leads are still being pursued. And then there's the donation. The decision to give $500,000 to organizations that help other families wasn't symbolic. It was strategic. Savannah explained that attention on her family could be used to amplify the struggles of countless others. That reframing changes the emotional center of the story. Instead of isolation, it highlights connection. Instead of fear, it emphasizes responsibility. And that's why this case continues to resonate. Because it raises a quiet but powerful question. What would you do if someone you loved vanished without answers? Would you focus only inward, or would you try to turn pain into purpose? The Guthrie family chose the second path, and that choice has added moral weight to the investigation, without crossing into pressure, blame, or speculation. As of now, authorities continue to urge anyone with information to contact the appropriate agencies. They've made clear that no detail is too small to report. And Savannah's final plea echoed that sentiment. If you've been unsure, let this be the moment you speak up. Not out of fear, but out of humanity. So where does this leave the case today? Active, unresolved, and very much alive in the public consciousness. But the next chapter may not come from a press release. It may come from one person deciding that now is the time to share what they know. And that brings us to the bigger picture, because cases like this don't just test investigators. They test communities. They ask whether attention fades or stays focused, whether hope weakens or adapts. And the answer to that question is still being written. This story isn't about shock, it's about uncertainty and how people respond to it. Because sometimes the answers don't come loudly, they come slowly, and they change everything.